I just want to welcome everyone to today's webinar. If you want to know about Krpano, this is the Getting Started with Krpano webinar with Matt Rowell. So you're in the right place if that's what you're here for. My name is Gavin Farrell. I'll be your co-moderator today. We're part of the International Virtual Reality Professionals Association. It's a mouthful. It's short for IVRPA. And we just want to make sure that before we get started that you guys are all viewing this in the optimal way possible. So if you're on a Chrome browser or a Firefox browser, then you're all set. That's the ideal way to watch this presentation. If you're on an iPad or using Safari, not all the webinar features may be supported. So just be cognizant of that as we go through. You might not be able to download the, for instance, the practice files that our presenter has made. Brian, do you want to kind of reintroduce yourself, or should we skip on to bringing Matt?
Let me just say welcome to everybody and thank you for joining us today. And let's take it over to Matt.
Okay, so today's presenter is Matt Rowell. He's based here in Portland, Oregon. It's a wonderful city in the United States. Matt got started in panoramic photography all the way back in 2012 when he was accepted in the Google Business View program. And he immediately got hooked on VR and immersive content creation, jumping headfirst into 360 video and more. Later, he founded 360 Labs, 2014, which is a VR production company, also based here in Portland, Oregon. And what Matt and his team do is they specialize in cinematic quality 360 content creation for brands and enterprises. I'm sure many of you are actually familiar with their work. They've done some really incredible work in the Grand Canyon, which I think this might be a picture that you're looking at from. Matt is uniquely qualified in conveying the real-life applications of Krpano, so we thought he would be the perfect person to bring on and kind of guide you through this learning this program. So one thing to mention too is that we're going to ask you guys, everyone, all the attendees today, to stick around because at the end, Matt will not only be answering your questions, but he will also be giving away some exciting prizes, which some of you might be aware of or not. If any time you have a question for Matt, please look over. There's the Q&A tab on the right-hand panel of your screen. Please feel free to ask questions there. And also, please feel free to upvote other people's questions, other attendees' questions. If any time you need to see Matt's presentation in better detail, on the top right over the video, there's a white little full screen icon, and feel free to freely toggle that on and off. Lastly, there's a chat tab if you'd like to communicate with other attendees. And it's a friendly reminder, this event is being recorded and the video will be posted to our website within a few days. And without further ado, I bring you Matt Rowell.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. It's really great to be back and talking to the IVRPA again. I spoke at the conference in Las Vegas in 2014, so it's been a while. I see a lot of familiar names in the chat window, so it's great to see friends on here today. I also wanted to mention that we're going to be giving away some 30% off discount coupons for Krpano licenses at the end, so if you stick around, we'll be drawing some names for those as well. So thanks, Brian and Gavin, for the introduction. We're going to talk about Krpano today. I'm going to switch over and share my screen. First of all, if you want to follow along and work with some files as well, I have some practice materials, and those are in the Handouts tab on the right-hand side. If you have any trouble accessing those, you can ask Brian or Gavin in chat to help with those. But basically, it's just a set of panoramas and the fully built tour that you can look at for reference as well. And then you can also go to krpano.com to download the software for your operating system. If you use it without the, sorry about that, my phone in the office is ringing. If you use that, you can use it without a license. It just watermarks it, but you can use all of the features. So we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about what Krpano is and what it can do. But before we do that, I wanted to start with a poll. to get an idea of what everyone's experience level is, that should pop up. And while I'm talking about Krpano, we'll let those poll results come in and take a look later. Today we're going to be talking about virtual tours, and but Krpano is much more than just a virtual tour platform. It's kind of a robust, immersive media platform that can display all kinds of content, from 360 photos to 360 videos to stereo panos, even depth maps. So there's a million things you can do with Krpano, and basically the sky is the limit if you want to get in and tinker and find out. And this is an example of just kind of a basic virtual tour of a cruise ship that we did for a client, and they embed this to their website, and they have the different suites that you can look at to kind of get an idea of what their amenities are like. And this is a use case that a lot of you probably have from your clients and things that you want to build with Krpano. So it's a pretty basic tour with arrow-based navigation, and just you can look around and kind of take a look at what's there. As far as Gigapixel content is in Krpano as well. As a flat image, you can zoom in and see details. This is one that I took of the Portland skyline. I did this right at the beginning of the pandemic lockdown to kind of give folks some fun stuff to look at in Portland. When you zoom in, it reveals hotspots and shows different 360 videos around town. So it's different things we've done, some events, some things like that. And if you click on them, you can view 360 video content as well as 360 photo content. So just one of the things that Krpano is great at is just mixing multiple types of content. So this is a 360 photo. Click on that and view it as well. And this interface is all custom stuff that we designed and put in here through Krpano's XML. Here's another example, just a grocery store tour that we did for a local company here. You can either look at a quick guide or a 360 video tour, or jump right into departments from here. And they have videos embedded into their tour. So when I click to a certain location, I can pop up videos and show 2D video content as well. So Krpano is really great at kind of mixing in different types of content and having different kinds of details all together. We're going to be talking about an example like this today, which is a real estate example, which is just a high-rise apartment. And we're going to run through the step-by-step process of taking these panoramas that I've shot and then ingesting them into a tour and making it live. So the first step to getting Krpano is to, actually, before I jump into downloading Krpano, I just want to take a look back at the poll really quick and close that out. It looks like 74% of you are beginners. So that's awesome, because we're going to be starting from the very beginning here. We have 21% moderate skill level and about 5% expert. So it's great to see some folks on there that have done a lot as well. And we would love your input too. So kind of moving on to downloading Krpano. It's available for Windows, Mac, as well as Linux. And I'm working in Windows today. So you can download a 64-bit version or a 32-bit version for Windows. And what it gives you is a executable file, not an executable, actually a zip file, sorry. So when you get that, you get Krpano, and you need to extract that somewhere on your computer. So you can right-click and extract all and put that in a folder. I like to put it on my desktop, and I usually name it the same as the file. So if it's Krpano 1.20.9, I will put the version on there so I remember specifically what that was. So if they come out with a new version, I can always easily check that without having to go into the Krpano tools and look at my version. From there, Krpano tools is kind of your main interface here to work with Krpano. And they have recently brought in almost all of the features into this one executable file into this one program, which makes it a lot easier to use and a lot simpler to work with the tool than it has been. If you've done it in the past, you've probably seen a lot of droplets and different things and wondered, well, I don't even know where to get started, but they've kind of made it really simple and easy. So we're going to start by taking a look at the Krpano tools. I'll make it a little bit larger so that you can see it. And I'm just going to run through a quick high level of what the Krpano tools features are here at the top. So you have the Make VTour is the very first tab. And this is where they've added all of the droplets that they've had in the past. And in the past, these were individual batch files, but now they're in this drop down here where I can select. And this is where I build panos. This is where I build the tiles to build virtual tours. So there's multiple options here. The ones that say VTour, I can drop any number of files. I can drop 20 panoramas in here and it'll build a virtual tour for me automatically. And that's what we're going to do here in a second. There's different settings from multi-res to normal. And the main most important thing to know there is that multi-res is basically creating multiple versions of tiles for Krpano, so that if I'm a mobile user, I might get different optimized files versus if I am on a desktop, I might get higher resolution, higher quality files, knowing that I have a bigger screen to work with and potentially more bandwidth. And then the ones on top are all related to one specific pano. So I can make one flat image, like a gigapixel, for example, or a flat panorama. I can make a single, multi-res panorama or a single normal panorama. If I just wanted to quickly look at a pano in a 360 viewer, I could drop it in here and create a Krpano instance with that. The VTour editor is basically a tool to drop any tour XML file into, and you can view your tour directly in here without having to have a web server or upload it to your server or FTP everything to be able to look at your changes. And when you make changes, they happen on the fly, which is kind of cool. There's a convert tool as well that converts spheres to cubes. So if you want to convert 2:1 equirectangular files to cubes or cubes back to 2:1 equirectangular files, you can use this tool here. Krpano takes equirectangulars just fine as an input, so I don't generally have to use this, but I like to use it for 360 video because oftentimes I will export a TIFF from Premiere when I need to do like a clean plate, and I'll drop it in here so I can get the cube faces so I can easily look down and see the tripod without having to have the equirectangular distortion. You've also got some other tools. You can protect the tour with a password. You can limit domains. There's encryption tools as well, where you can kind of wrap all your files and code base into one file and encrypt it. We're not going to get too much into that today. It's more of an advanced feature, but just know that those are there if you're concerned about people seeing your code or having access to your skin files and things like that. You can use that. There's an update tool. If newer versions of Krpano come out and you want to update old tours, you can use that to update the Swift and JS files here. And then you've got some settings here, some basic settings for the VTour editor. As well, you can add your registration information in here. When you register, you can paste your code in. Buying Krpano is it's a one-time fee, and it's actually a pretty decent deal considering it's 159 euro, but it's a one-time fee. When you pay for that license, you basically own the software until a newer major version comes out later and they require like an upgrade fee or something like that. But I have used Krpano for several years now, 4 or 5 years, and they've only had one upgrade in that entire time that I had to pay for. So everything else has been a free update, and you can also use it on basically any of your computers that you want to. So if you have a laptop or a desktop, or if you have a home computer, an office computer, you can install on multiple computers. And when you upload tours to your clients' websites, your license goes along with that. So you can have hundreds of clients, they can have tours as well, and you don't have to have them buy a license every time you do it. So considering when you look at this, compared to some tools, it may be a little bit more expensive, but you get a lot of value out of it. So let's go ahead and move along to creating our first virtual tour. And again, if you have questions, please put those in the Q&A, and Gavin and Brian will take a look at those and we'll kind of curate what we have. And if I haven't covered it when we're finished, we'll get to that at the end. So to start on building a virtual tour, we're going to go back to Krpano Tools. We're going to click on Make VTour. And we're going to choose a droplet down here on the bottom. And I'm going to choose VTour VR because that actually also does even more optimization for WebXR browsers. So I will have all of the automation of the multi-res tour, but also a little bit more as well for VR viewers so they can see that. I'm going to go ahead and bring up my project files. And these are the same project files that I shared with everyone. So I've got 4 panoramas here. I'm going to bring in 3 at the moment. And so all I have to do is take these and drag them and drop them into that window. And as you can see, it's starting to create cube faces. And it does this based on the overall resolution and size of the pano. And it will automatically compress those as well. So I've given it JPEGs, but if I had TIFFs, it's going to create JPEGs and it's going to compress those as much as it can. So the quality of the file that you give it doesn't really change the output. So you don't need to worry about optimizing your images before you feed them to the Make VTour tool. But if you have a huge file that's, say, 27,000 pixels, but you don't want users to necessarily see it in that resolution, it's going to create way more tiles and much larger files out of that 27,000 pixel file. So it's kind of based on resolution. And these ones are 11,000, about 11,000 pixels. So it's kind of a 12K to 1 correct. And it goes through, and it takes a second to go through and do that. But as you can see, it's already creating the files here in the folder in the root where I created that. And we are almost done. So basically, the larger the file, the more these cube faces it creates, and overall, the larger the size of your virtual tour. So for some, it's kind of a balancing act of figuring out what is the smallest resolution you can make your panos and then still look at them on like a large 4K monitor, for example, and not really see much of a difference in detail. So now I've got everything done, and I can go ahead and click Edit Tour here, or I can also just click in here and see that it's generated all of my files. And I've got the Tour XML here that it's generated. And I can click over to VTour Editor and drag and drop that XML like it asked me to do over here. And now without needing a web server or anything, I can already go in and look at this and see what I've got. And right off the bat, I've already got a pretty comprehensive tour without even doing anything at all. So I've got access to navigation here. I can see the items that I've created, and I can click through and I can look at those and I can navigate. But there's a lot of interesting things I can do specifically to change this tour as well. And we can do that easily right here in the tour editor. So to kind of go back to look at what Krpano generates when it makes this tour, it takes all of your panos, puts them in individual tile folders. So those are the tiles it was generating. And as I mentioned, there are a lot of them. So it takes a while to sort of upload these to web servers sometimes. It puts in some default plugins that go with every Krpano installation. It creates skin files as well. So the things that you're seeing here, these images, those are stored here in the skin icons. And these are just PNGs. So I can modify these or update them or swap them out with whatever I want to create my own images as well. And then it also creates an HTML file. And that's what's going to, when I look at it in a browser and upload it, that's what's going to show it to me as well. And then you've got your JS and your Swift files. Those are your core Krpano files. You never update those. Those are kind of fixed, specific. And then you've got your tour XML, which is your basic tour information. And then there's a testing server executable here. That's for if you wanted to do something like quickly spawn a testing server locally without having to, run it on a web server. But I just like to use the tour editor here because it's just a lot easier to drop it in there without having to run a separate executable and do all of that. So a lot of times I'll just delete that or get rid of it. You don't necessarily want to upload that to your live web server. It's not really something that's meant for your final tour that goes up live on a website. So to kind of take a look at that, you can open up in a text editor. I like to use Notepad++ myself, but like any basic text editor can look at the XML or the HTML specifically, and then the tour XML as well. So the tour XML is, or the tour HTML is fairly simple. It's of course referencing the Swift file. It's referencing the tour XML. It is referencing the JavaScript file as well. So if you were to put this on your own website and you're referencing all of these scripts, you can easily embed this into your website or integrate into WordPress or Drupal or whatever CMS you may have without having to do an iframe, for example, if you wanted to. And the tour XML, we'll get more into how that works as well. But this was all automatically generated when I used the Make vTour. It created all of my scenes, all of my tiles, and everything I'm doing. And a very quick and easy shortcut to start editing and working on your tour is to go into the tour editor, and I can add hotspots inline in the tour editor, or the tour editor specifically. So if I click add hotspot on the top, it gives me an arrow that I can drag and drop into place. And I'm going to drag and drop it right over here on top of this study, this office over here. And then I can click on it to get an option to choose a scene. And there's the office scene right there. I'm going to click on that and then click save. And now when I click on that, it navigates me to that office. And I can turn around, do exactly the same, add hotspot, drag it to where I want it, click it, select the scene there, in the kitchen, save that. And now I can easily go back and forth between both of those. And again, I can do the same for the bedroom over here, click that in place. This is a little bit harder to do in the XML because you're trying to type in coordinates and guess where the hotspot is. But when you can use the tour editor, it's a lot easier because you can just drag it, just put it exactly where you want it. And it makes it easier to visualize that. And so I'm going to add one more, click that, kind of drag it down here and select the kitchen again. Click save. And that looks pretty good. So I can walk back and forth through this apartment and check it out. The hotspots are working. When I'm finished with that, I'm going to click Save Tour XML. And when I do that, it automatically creates a backup. So this is the version that I was working with before. So if for any reason I mess something up or I want to revert back, it's going to save these files here. So these will start to pile up over time. So just in case you're looking later and you're like, wow, why did all these show up? It does that automatically. You could turn that off if you don't want backup, but it's always kind of nice to have. And now if I return to my text editor where I had opened up, it's going to tell me, oh, look, this file's been modified. Would you like to reload it? Sure. So now when I look at each of the scenes, it's added the hotspot that I've put in. So I didn't have to go in and do any code to do this. It just did it automatically, and it linked each scene. And it has these coordinates that otherwise, if I hadn't used the tour editor, I would have to type these in and understand that the horizontal is negative 1.45 and the vertical is 8.4. But if I'm just clicking, I'm like stabbing in the dark until I go back and look at it. But if I do make a change, for example, you can change the titles of these scenes really easily. Like this one just says Mirabella 0, which is not really telling my clients what that is, for example, or my my viewer specifically that this is an office, right? But it says Mirabella 0 down there. So I can change that and just put office. And if I click save and go back, it automatically generates that change in the tour editor on the fly. And so now this says office. And I can do the same for the other one. I can call that kitchen, for example. And then I can call the final one bedroom. And go back again. And it's changed. Another thing people like to change is it says virtual tour office. And If you're in a virtual tour, you don't really need to be told that you're in a virtual tour because it's kind of a given, right? So maybe instead of have it say virtual tour, you might want to have it say your client's name. So up here at the very top, there's a title on the first Krpano tag that says virtual tour. And I might just change that to the name of the building, Mirabella, click save. And again, now it says Mirabella office and Mirabella kitchen and Mirabella bedroom. So the next thing that we might want to take a look at doing here is changing the order that this loads, because right now we start in the office, but I think I prefer to start here. And Krpano kind of does that based on specifically which scene you have at the very top. So when we start, we want to have a different scene at the top. So I'm going to change the order by just selecting the entire scene and cutting and pasting it on top. The XML is the main thing that people don't really like about Krpano and that concerns them the most. But when you really kind of look at it and read it, the syntax is pretty simple to understand. You have tags that start. For example, each scene is an individual panorama that I've loaded, right? And it has a closing scene tag, it has an opening scene tag, and then it has parameters like its name, like its title. It has some other parameters here related to mobile VR that you don't need to really mess with. Those are added by default. You also have a thumbnail URL. And as you could guess, that's the thumbnail that's down here. And so you can change that. You can edit that. I can see where it's at. It's in the panos, tiles area. So if I went back to look at my folder where this tour is, I can look at panos, tiles, and there's the thumbnail. So I view it as an icon. I can take a look and I can swap this out. I could open it in Photoshop. I could change it if I don't like the perspective or what it's pointed at. If it doesn't make sense to me, I can go in and change that. Something that's more easier to understand if it's not the field of view that I want. So easy to swap those out and change them whenever you want to. Moving on, like the scene has a view tag in here where I can specifically change they call it H look at and V look at. Whenever there's an H and a V, that usually means horizontal and vertical. So I can change the opening orientation. If for some reason when I made my pano, I didn't point it in the right direction, I could do a complete 180, for example, and point in a whole different direction. So I could type in 180 there, and now when I have to reset to actually make it work, it will put me in a different orientation. So I go back to here and drop this in again. Now I'm put in the other direction, the opposite of where I was before. So basically just knowing that you can change that easily and quickly on the fly if you want to, if you just want to change the opening view without having to edit your panorama file. Just know that if it may not reflect automatically, you may have to drag your tour file back to kind of see where you're at. And you can also change the starting views on these as well directly in the editor by clicking on Set Startup View. So if I prefer to be kind of pointed this direction where I can see the beautiful mountain over there, I can click on this Set as Startup View and save the XML. And then in here, it automatically changed the H look at and also the vertical setting as well, because I guess I was tilted down a little bit. So now when I go back to this tour and I start it from that, it should go back to where I pointed it. And again, it created another backup file because I saved the tour XML once again. And As far as the rest, every scene has an opening scene tag, a closing scene tag. So when you paste elements into these, they're only contained in that one single scene. So you've got hotspots. Each of them have a unique name, spot 1, spot 2. I can modify those later if I want to. If I want to change the name or what scene it links to, I can do that here in the code if I prefer to do that instead of the editor. But when it's within this scene tag, it displays specifically in that scene. If it's outside of a scene tag, it's more of a global thing, and it shows throughout the tour, wherever I am. So things like your logo in the corner, something like that would go outside of a scene tag because it would always be persistent in that tour. You also have a variety of skin options in your tour XML, and you can change those. And that's where the tour editor kind of falls short. I can't go in here and change all kinds of colors and things like that, but I need to kind of go in and look at the code. But again, it's pretty human readable. I can specifically look at all these types of settings and see these are all related to maps, and I'm not doing anything with maps, so I'm going to go ahead and skip over that. And WebVR, yeah, we're going to go ahead and keep that on because we want people to do that. But then just kind of looking through, you have a lot of different tools that you can add. You can remove a title. If you don't want the title, you can turn that off. If you don't want thumbnails, you can turn those off. Or you can change the width and the height of those thumbnails if you'd prefer to. You can have them opened by default, or you can have them display text if you want to, or turn that off. So there's a bunch of things you can change just by changing these from true to false and changing some of these quick settings in here to completely change your tour and the way that it looks without really having to do much but change like a single attribute in the XML and then saving it. So for example, down here, you have a lot of design options. So I have design background color. Well, let's say maybe this is kind of a grayish color. Maybe my client would prefer that that be black. So I can change that down here. It's just a basic hex code. So I know that the hex code for black is just 0. So I'll type that in, click save, go back. Now I've got a black control bar at the bottom. So I can change it to match my client's branding. If they want different colors to match their website, I can do that. It also has like an alpha, which basically just means it's transparency. So right now it's set to 0.8. If I would rather have it solid black, I could set it to 1, which is completely opaque. So now I can't really see through it. If I want it to be like less obtrusive, I can set that to something like 0.5, save and go back. Now, if I do something like delete this quote, click save, go back, oops. But you'll see this when you do something with your XML that is not particularly in syntax. So everything wants to have quotes and things like that. The best part about using something like a text editor like Notepad++ is that it colors your code. So I can see right away that something odd is happening here, and oh, it's because I deleted that quote. I click save, it fixes that. So a lot of people get very frustrated with Krpano or trying to work with it because they might go in and modify something simple in the code and just forget that there should be a bracket or something, or when they're pasting or cutting and pasting things, they don't realize that, and then they have to go back through and kind of figure out what happened. And kind of having the backups is really helpful for that as well, because you can kind of revert back and see what you did. But just keeping true to the way that the syntax, like this is how a tag is generally closed out. You know, all of your attributes that are in quotes need to have beginning quotes and end quotes. Just kind of being careful when you're in here modifying settings and being mindful of that. Kind of moving on through the design settings, you can change things like the color of the text and the font. So if I prefer, you know, Verdana instead of Arial, I can go back and change that. So now at the bottom, you know, everything that shows is going to be Verdana, and I can change the, put some thumbs text on there, which should also be in the same font. Yep. So those are also in Verdana as well. So there's a number of things you can do specifically changing the styles without having to really do much, but just change one simple attribute. So another thing I wanted to talk about was, if you look down in the test materials, and if you're using test materials, you might be like, oh, look, his tripod is in there. What an amateur. So anyway, I left that in there specifically because for this client, they want a knitter cap to cover that has their logo and their branding. So I wanted to show you a simple and easy way to do that. Krpano's website has a number of really amazing examples where you can basically just scroll through and think about something that you might want to do, like having an animated hotspot or having background sound. And they have links to the XML files specifically for how to do that. So in this case, we can go and we can look at the Prettier logo, and they have a great example of exactly that. And if I click on the example, I can see it's there. And wow, it actually moves when I scroll with it, which is nice. So if I wanted to use that, they've got the XML right here on their website that I can cut and paste directly into my tour. And their XML is the same kind of basic as mine. It's got a Krpano tag in the beginning. It's got a Krpano tag here. And it's got a pano that it's showing as a preview. So I can put that code specifically into mine. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at that. And I've got the completed version of the tour right here. So what I have done is added there's an event for the Prettier logo that Krpano referenced. Sorry, different window. So what they're doing here is basically saying, if you change and you look around, we're going to move the hotspot with that. And then there's a hotspot with that logo, Krpano round logo. So I got to put that hotspot in all of my scenes, and I have to put this event. This event can be global because it can apply to everywhere that hotspot exists specifically. So what I have done is taken a hotspot, and I'm going to add it to each scene. And I'm just going to put it on the bottom where before the ending scene tag after the other hotspots. So there's one. There's two. And there's three. And I have changed the URL to my own logo that I've added for my client. And I put it in my skin folder. So this is relative to where Tour XML is. So if Tour XML is here and I have a skin folder and I have a Mirabella logo, there it is. But I haven't yet copied that over to this new tour that I've just generated. So I'm going to do that. So there's skin, and I'm going to go ahead and paste that logo for my client in there. There's the logo. Click save. And as I look down, there it is. But it's not moving yet because we haven't yet added the event. And what the event does, there it is. And that's where I've already pasted in the code in the example. But from the Krpano website, you can see there's an event here underneath. So I can click on that too, copy it from there. And then I'm going to put the event above the scenes because I want this to be global and applied to anywhere that somewhere that a Prettier logo exists, you're going to apply this event. So it's basically what it's doing. So all these are named Prettier logo, and you've got Prettier logo here. Click save. Now when I go back, it's going to follow with me. So no matter where I am, if I look down, my client's logo follows me with that. let's see how we're doing on time. Good. So also wanted to talk a little bit about how to implement 360 video scenes in these as well. So let's say I want to put a 360 video over here, and when you click on a hotspot to go to these mountains, then you can watch a beautiful time lapse, for example. And 360 video scenes are different in that you can easily set them up, but there are a lot of other settings you can do. We're just going to do a very simple implementation here to show. I have a scene here that I've created, and I'm going to paste that in down below on the bottom of the scenes, again, because I want an opening scene tag and a closing scene tag. And in the case of a video scene, you've got this is video pano true, which adds the video play controls specific needed to like stop and pause and change locations on the timeline and things like that. And then you have a little bit of a different setup here. You've got a plugin being called, specifically the Krpano video player. And I can point that to an MP4 file as well as a video poster and specifically load a 360 video into that scene. If I save this right now, nothing has been added because I haven't actually linked the scene or added anything there. So I also need to have my video content loaded. So I have my video file here, and I've got just a simple 2K MP4 that I've made just for the sake of easy download, as well as a poster file of the same dimension. So I'm going to copy my video file to my new tour here, and I'm going to paste that into the tour that we're building. So there we have a video MP4 and a video poster.jpg. And those are both referenced here. We're also, you notice there's a reference to plugins here. And those plugins are automatically, when we generated the tour, those were already put in here. So you've got your video player and everything you need to make this happen. So all we have to do is add it. And then I need to add a reference to it. So I can add a hotspot. And let's have an arrow that points out there. And click on that and select a scene. Doesn't have an icon because it doesn't generate an icon from the video and add that in the tour editor, because it's not like a regular pano, but it works in the same way. So if I click on that, now I've got that in here. I navigate to it, plays the 360 video. This is obviously not the same location, but just for the sake of example, there it is. The difference is you've got a play bar here on the bottom, and you can control that and scrub back and forth and see how much time you have left. And when the video ends, it dips to black, but you can also specifically set it to do something else. If you want it to go back to where you were, you can do that with a JavaScript event as well. And there's a lot of, that's getting into way more detail as far as what you can do, but very simply, I can always go back and have that video there, save the tour XML. So mixing 360 videos, 360 photos together is very seamless. To do a more detailed implementation, you could add like a quality selector where I could choose like 4K or 2K or whatever I want, depending on my bandwidth. And I could have like stop and play options and fast forward, rewind, and all those things if I wanted to. But as a simple and easy way to implement 360 video, this is pretty quick and easy to do in that solution. So then as far as beyond that, I mean, that's kind of the basics of what I wanted to cover today for getting started. The Krpano website is an amazing resource, and I would suggest definitely looking into that if you want. As I mentioned before, they have amazing examples to do almost anything that you'd want to do. Beyond that, if you don't feel like cutting and pasting code and going too far into that, there are a variety of plugins that are both made specifically by Krpano, but then also plugins made by contributors. And some of them are free and some of them are paid plugins, but a lot of things you might want to do, like specialized 360 video players or, more advanced tour builders, just different types of things that you could think of. You may want an image gallery or a lot of different options that you can look at. So there's tons of plugins here that you can look at on their website. There's full documentation as well. So everything I've talked about in the XML, like, what does a scene tag do, or what does a plugin tag do, or anything you might want to know about every possible attribute is here. And so a lot of times if I'm stumped on something and I'm like, how do I do this? I'll go to this page and I'll search and I'll do a Control F and I'll just try to find something specific to a tag or something so I can see what I'm looking for and find a way to determine what the attributes are and how I might fix it. They also have a very vibrant forum community. People here are very active, very helpful, always willing to lend a hand. I've had some really, really hard questions answered here by folks. There's also people out there who will do freelance work and help you out if, for a fee, if you need some coding help and advice on a special feature for a client that you just want it to act in a certain way. There's people on here who could help out with that as well. And then as far as anything you might want to ask about, they have it split down into, 360 videos or panoramas or specific options. So I would suggest that you register. It's a lot easier to find content and use the search if you register. And then, beyond that, I think at this,
so we've got some Q&A here.
Cool.
You got some time to go over that?
Yeah, I think we're about ready to wrap up here. So that was just the basics. I want to talk about the documentation, but we're at we're about 50 minutes. So let's take some questions.
Awesome. Okay, so from Juan, he says he asks, what are the advantages of using Krpano over something like Pano 2 VR or 3D Vista?
Well, that's a great question. The main advantage is that something like that is going to have built-in features that if the features do what you want and it's easy to use, then by all means that's a great option. But if you want to do something very specific that you want a very specific UI, you want a very specific look and feel, you need a very specific feature that's not available, you can build it in Krpano. So if you're willing to get in there and code and tinker and figure it out, it's mostly just the versatility of going beyond just what these software packages offer.
Okay, great. Amy asks, there was a lot of acronyms in there. Is it possible to get a legend to explain them, i.e., what is a droplet, what is a skin, etc.?
Right. Yeah. So there's not really a lot of information to explain kind of how that works in BASIC, but I mean, a droplet is what they call, it's basically a batch file, and they call it a droplet because you drag and drop your panos onto it. So, and it's just kind of a basic, and knowing what it is isn't really, as long as you know how to use the feature, it doesn't really matter. And a skin is basically when they explain like specifically how the control bar works. Like this particular tour has a skin, right? It has a home button and it has all these colors, and these are all part of a skin file specifically. And I've designed these and added that, so I can change that to something else. And by default, Krpano has skin options, and that's a great question as well because I didn't really go over that. You can also change your skin on the fly in Krpano by using some of the presets that they already have. So they have different designs like flat, glass, ultralight. If I uncomment one of these and just click save again, go back to the Pano editor, it changes my look and feel.
Nice.
And there's 6 of these here. So if I wanted to change that, I can do that. And then I can also individually go in and modify the XML for these skins. So specifically when they make a skin is basically an XML file with a collection of graphics that kind of goes together and defines what the user interface looks like.
Juan has a related question, which is,
Sure.
What if you wanted to do something like an accordion menu? Are there slightly advanced features that could be done in that respect?
Yes, there are. There are a lot of menu systems available in the Krpano examples. Actually, I forget what it's called, but there's one of them in here that just has different types of menus, from drop downs to accordions to select boxes. So I would definitely suggest looking through there. I don't know exactly. They call it like a combo box, I think. Yeah. So there's a couple of different, so that's a great example. The combo box drop down example is one where they just have a ton of different things that you can select and look at and kind of take these designs and use them how you want to, and then you can change and tinker and do what you want to make them work for you. So
can you go back into that page that has all the options and scroll up a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
There's a question we have in here from Jade, who says, kind of wants to know if Krpano can handle depth maps and 6DOF.
Yes. I haven't, beyond actually playing the demos and looking at them in the headset, and they're a lot of fun, I haven't really experimented much with the depth maps, but they do have I think they have a depth map option.
Up, kind of near the top there. Scroll down a little bit. I think you'll see them. There it is.
Yeah, the depth map demo tour.
There it is, right there.
Is right there. So,
let's see.
Yeah. So it's kind of, I have to walk around with my keys, but you can see that there's certainly depth. So it's supported. I've heard there are some minor issues with it, but it's kind of like the latest, newest feature that they have. But definitely, go to their website and check out this example, this depth map demo tour on the examples page. And then you can, if you have a connected headset, you can look at that directly through WebXR. It's pretty fun to check out.
Awesome. All right, just a few more questions here because we're running short on time. Questions about Notepad. I use Notepad to edit. This is from Thomas McBee. But the code does not look as neat as what I see here. Is there some setting in Notepad to make the code look prettier?
Okay, so I'm using Notepad++, which is more of a specific Notepad tool for coders. So if you're not using Notepad++, that might be what the problem is. But there's also, if you are using Notepad++, you can also, in the encoding tab, or is it the... in the language tab, sorry, you can choose specifically. So if I had this not set correctly, it wouldn't show me anything. But if I tell it this is XML, then it's going to display it like XML. But again, this is the actual software is Notepad++.
Very nice.
And it's free, so great text editor to use.
Elaine has a question if this is available, if Krpano is available for Macs.
Yes, it is. Okay. Macs, Linux, and Windows.
Awesome. And we've got the last question here from Patrick. It says he's been using PTP, Panotour Pro, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Should he be learning Krpano himself or create virtual tours? He wants to know basically how easy it is to take virtual tours he's already created and replicate them using Krpano, and how much time you think if it's a worthy endeavor or not.
I haven't done that before, but I've heard that Panotour Pro is based specifically on Krpano. So I would assume, and unless it's a much older version, that you would be able to use the Krpano update tool. The first thing I would try is to get Krpano tools and take a look at the update tool and see if you were to update that, the Flash and the HTML5 files specifically, and would your tour still work? And actually, if you wanted to do that without having to purchase a license, I'm not sure if it works. You can try it without purchasing a license, but also even I would be able to look at something like that and tell you if it worked, and try it really quick. And that would be my advice, would just be to give it a shot and see if that tour still runs.
Okay. Matt, we've got a couple of questions that have been coming in the chat window instead of the Q&A. So let me just ask those real quick.
Yeah, take a look at those. And
yeah, is it so this is from Ron Potts. Is it possible to run a tour with a side-by-side viewer that would show a before and after view? What I could use at a construction site to see a framing view and then a completed view used in construction. What I would call a digital twin viewing window.
Yes, I've actually seen somebody do that. The thing with Krpano, if you put it on a web page, you can make it whatever size you want. So I could have one Krpano instance that's 50% over here and one that's 50% over here in the same window, and run those side by side. They were doing that a lot when they first started doing stereo, and people were doing very early experimentation of that and trying to like set it up for VR. So you had two eyes, and before they actually went through and did the whole WebXR implementation. But I don't know if it's still available. If you search the forums, though, there were a lot of people talking about doing exactly that. But it should be easy enough to implement through a web page where you're basically just kind of embedding two Krpano instances side by side.
Awesome. Oscar has a really interesting question here. He says, has anyone had any real experiences using Krpano plus WebRTC integration, which is a live presenter plugin? Now for this pandemic, anybody using it with their clients to get some feedback? So I think what he's saying is that maybe you've got a Krpano tour, but there's maybe like a on the wall, there's a live screen that has a live view. Is that something that
I haven't actually tried that myself, but I've been thinking about doing that, especially because of the pandemic. And I've been thinking about actually creating a client review tool myself, so that when we do a lot of 360 video work, and things like Frame.io, they kind of fall short as far as 360 and VR support. So I thought it'd be really awesome if my clients could like look at a rough cut in 360 in a headset, but then also be able to communicate with me at the same time to say, oh, well, I don't really like how he walks over there, and let's choose a different take. But I'm certainly interested in looking at that. But yeah, I haven't experienced or tried the RTC with that.
Awesome. We got one last question. Does a 360 video show up in the thumbnail menu?
It does not by default. The panos show up, and the video scenes do not show up in the menu. So you'd have to add that to the menu.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Matt, thank you so much for this incredible presentation. I'm going to switch over to Brian now, and we're going to go through the Krpano license code giveaway, and then yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Thanks. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so we're now going to give away some Krpano licenses, courtesy of Klaus Reinfeld, the creator of Krpano. We'll be giving away 930 discounts to our members and one to a lucky non-member. But if you are a non-member, we're going to be sending you details of an opportunity to get one of these codes as well if you join the IVRPA. So I'm going to send that out after the webinar. So I'm going to show the names of the winners on the screen now. I'm just going to share a slide with you. Whoops.
Roll, please.
Here we go. Screen share. Where's it gone? Application.
I think we're in slide mode right now. You need to.
Yeah, I'm just switching to screen share mode. So I hope this comes up. I think that's the winners. Yeah. Okay. Can you see that?
Not yet.
Takes a moment to come through. Yeah. Where's that?
There it is. It's coming.
Yeah. It's very slow, isn't it? Screen share. Is that visible?
No.
No. Let me try one more time. Here it comes, I think.
Roll continues.
Try one. Hang on.
Spence is killing us.
I'm sorry. I might just read the names out if it doesn't work this time. Here we go. One more try. Screen share, application. And winners. Okay, I'll read the names, see if this comes through. Brad Gill, Ron Potts, Andres Bobano, Richard Husselhoff, Margie van den Ove, at last, Marcel Veselia, JT, Katerina Nicolia, Christian Mag, and Mustafa Dilla. And
woo! Yay! Congratulations, everybody. Brad, Ron, Andre,
Richard. How to use them after the webinar. Okay, so
yeah, and then can you do me a favor, Brian, and please, since you're still screen sharing, please pull up the IVRPA.org website homepage.
Oh, now you're really testing me. Hang on. I have to actually share another screen. So this
give that a go, and I know that's going to take a few seconds.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
I want to just thank everyone today for joining us, and I also want to mention that later today we're going to you'll have the opportunity to submit a survey on today's presentation that you'll receive via email. I know surveys are super annoying, but if you feel like there's anything you'd like to see more of, any experiences you'd like to share about we're using WebMarker as our platform over something like Zoom. And also, as we continue to expand our online offerings, any and all feedback is extremely helpful. So thank you. And I just want to also mention that IVRPA is run by a team of volunteers. So we're not paid to do what we do. We do this for the community and to enhance the panoramic community. And we respond well to any ideas, and we love having volunteers in the organization. So this is the IVRPA.org website. Please feel free to come here to learn more about 360 VR, photography, videography, photogrammetry, and a whole lot more. And also just kind of keep an eye on us on the socials, because we're planning a full program of webinars for 2021. And also we'll be having a virtual conference this year in June, probably likely early June. And so we encourage any non-members, if you're here as a non-member watching this webinar, to please to join us. And you'll get exclusive access to hundreds of hours of private member content on videos on how to produce 360 videos and all sorts of other professional virtual reality techniques. So yeah, we just want to conclude with saying we hope to see you at our future webinars, and goodbye, and thank you so much for joining us today. So thank you.